Cindy also says VCs tend to say that they back the person and not the idea, but if they always back the same kind of person, male, then women entrepreneurs have a better chance of getting funded when they have something that's actually working in the marketplace. Do you agree that women need to have their business developed before they can achieve funding? And I've heard this from a few women VCs and also women founders, that if they have a product or a service already starting to function, then they've got a much better chance across the board with venture capital.
Yeah, but I would say it's so for people like me who invest in consumer internet. That's what we expect from everyone. Okay. Meaning that I don't fund
you don't fund an idea
on the 90 investments I've done over the past 6 years.
Yes.
I could point to maybe 2 where I've actually funded the PowerPoint. So the guy who sort of said, hey, I'm going to do this, and I sort of sent him a check.
Yeah.
And in both cases I can think of, those were people I actually had met and worked beforehand with, and so I knew, because the issue is execution is actually a very big part of the risk of a startup, and so just saying, hey, I can go build this doesn't really mean much. And in this current environment, not only is building, but actually distribution, so figuring out how you can actually acquire customers and everything.
Yes.
You might have the best product in the world, if you can't find a way to actually get in front of people, it's not going to work.
Yes.
So figuring that out early on is part of the hurdle. And so people who come here will show 2 things. One is sort of a working product prototype, sort of alpha version. And then I would expect to have a minimum set of validation tests, that will prove that those people have figured out, customer acquisition and sort of the funnel that those users will go through, to become part of the service.
Fantastic.
And if you don't have that, then it's going to be tricky for you. And once again,
doesn't matter.
male, female, whatever.
Great, and that's really pragmatic advice, thank you. Often advice for sourcing venture is equated with dating, and my background, you may not know, is in the online dating industry, implying that there's a matching that needs to happen with entrepreneur and investor.
Yep.
Have you noticed a general psychological profile of venture capitalists and also of entrepreneurs that promotes that attraction and synergy between them to develop a great startup?
I do believe that there is the notion of great match or matching sort of happening between investors and entrepreneurs, because at the end of the day, and that's why the reason why
it's a long relationship, isn't it? If you invest really, and you have to get along.
3, 5, 10 years sometimes. I have friends who've been on boards for 12 years.
Yes.
Can you think 12 years on a board?
Yes.
It's crazy.
Some marriages don't last that long.
Exactly. I wasn't going to make that comment. I was like, wow. So I think that. And that's why, to be honest, many entrepreneurs fail at fundraising because they don't go through the very first important step of doing the homework and figuring out what's the match. It's not like figuring out the profile like you do on eHarmony or whatever, but basically saying, hey, out of those, let's say, 400 firms that exist here in Silicon Valley, which ones do, let's say, early stage consumer internet, are interested in this particular set of markets, have done deals in the surroundings of the market I'm addressing, not completely overlapping because otherwise it's too close.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, and so you want to come up with your list of 10 to 20. It's a sales job, so it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You figure out who are the 10 or 20 prospects that you should be going to. You do your homework. You look at per firm who would be the partner or the partners you should be addressing, and then figure out through the network who you have sort of the closest relationship with, and you tag those, because this is where the highest likelihood of success will happen. And so I see too often entrepreneurs who just waste their times and cycles to just send random either business plans or trying to reach out to you, and end up with people who are just the wrong people to talk to, and by definition they fail, right? They get no. Whereas people who are very, very precise about who they should be talking to actually
have more success.
Have more success. It's like us. When I go raise or help my companies to raise their next round of financing.
Yes.
I'm not blasting an email to my
Everyone.
hundreds of contacts in the VC world.
Yes.
I basically figure out who are the 3 or 5 firms that
Very
are the
good.
most relevant,
Yes.
and I will sort of go myself sort of ping saying, hey,
Yes.
X company doing this. This is the progress.
Yes.
This is why I think you could be sort of interested.
Yes.
Do you want to meet?
Yes.
And that just lowers the hurdle for those guys
Yes.
to get that meeting.
Yes.
So
Brilliant.
you have to sort of think about it that way.
And when women entrepreneurs or any entrepreneur comes in, is there also another piece that happens if they've done that homework? And I think that's fantastic pragmatic advice that you've given. Is there another piece then that they have to match with you in some way? I guess some personality level if you're going to be working with them for a long time, or interest, or is there anything else, the criteria that they would need?
No, I think it's
Okay.
it's the. I'm just trying to sort of be pragmatic on that. I think I always appreciate when it's clear that people have done the homework and sort of can relate to either they know my portfolio
Yes.
or they sort of understand the kinds of things I do, or they say, hey, we understand that you like this or that or whatever. I think I like that they've done their research, which means that I'm not a random sort of investor on their list.
Yes.
They're actually coming here for a reason.
Personalizes it. Yeah.
That's a bit of personalization, but
Yeah.
to be honest, it's not even necessary, because at the end of the day, it's a job to go fundraise, and
Yes.
I'm one of the guys that they should sort of reach out to.
Okay.
So you don't want to try and change who you are, to sort of
Yes.
fit someone else or whatever.
Yes,
You basically,
yes.
I tell people when I can feel that there is a potential sort of interest on my part
Yes.
to work with them, is I try and give them the lowdown of what that means to work with me over 5 to 7 years.
Yes.
And I say you should talk to people who have done that and are still alive, because
So
it can
do
be
some
sometimes
due
challenging.
diligence on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good.
Absolutely, the entrepreneur should do as much due diligence on the investor as the investor does on the entrepreneur,
Very good point.
because you want to make sure that whoever we sell as well, and so we say, hey, we'll do this and we'll do that, and we'll help here and we'll help there, and you want to make sure that people who have actually been in portfolio for 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, actually saying, yeah, it's actually what he's doing.
Brilliant.
But be yourself, be true to yourself. Don't try and project something different
Yes.
than what you actually are, because at some point either it's going to show up in due diligence. So if ever, like, people say, well, what if I failed in the past, or what if I have
Yes.
sort of this issue in the
Yes.
in my career, whatever, I would say be upfront about it and just mention it. Don't throw it out like in the first 30 seconds of the first meeting,
No.
but be really sort of plain and honest about what you've done, and if you failed, that's fine. That's what we'll sort of live.
So a little bit of authenticity, and again, very different than in Europe, as we were saying, because if you actually exposed the failure, you'd be out the door. Really
And it's because at the end of the day, we don't. Unfortunately, we can't spend that much time sort of trying to
Yes.
read people,
Yeah.
and so if ever there is something which sort of sometimes you have this great meeting, but there's something which bothers you in the back, like
Yes.
there's something which quite doesn't work out or whatever, and
Yes.
you're going to try and sort of drill on that during the due diligence.
Yes.
And unfortunately, if there's one thing that you haven't been sort of completely open about or whatever, and we found it about it, you're gone.
Yeah, because it would be a betrayal, and some sort of lack of trust would
It's
build
not betrayal,
up.
but yeah, it's basically it's trustworthiness is one of the number
Yes.
one, and work ethics is sort
Yes.
of the number one sort of characteristic that we expect from our entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And if you don't sort of obey that in the very beginning of the relationship, then it's not going to work.
Yes, how it starts is how it will finish. That's very good advice, thank you. In the dance with an entrepreneur, both in the decision-making process of funding a startup and then in working with those startups, what are the necessary qualities that make a good venture capitalist? And some of the talents that have been mentioned to me by VCs is, would you trust your gut instincts and feelings that happen within the relationship with the entrepreneur as signs about what's happening in the business or the startup? And another way was that you would manage by influence or persuasion. What's your preferred route?
So as a former entrepreneur and executive, the challenge for us who come from the operative background is that at the beginning you tend to project yourself in the startup, and
Yes.
and so you tend to say, hey, you know, this is how I would do this, or
Yes.
and that's really bad, because by definition you're not part of the startup. So we are, you know, we're in the service business. We're here to help support, you know, influence, and every now and then, you know, when things don't work, then cut people. But that happens, you know, not as often as people sort of tend to mention it.
Yes.
And so my approach is always to sort of expose my thoughts, to say, hey, this is what I think, this is those are the questions, this is what I would do.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, I don't run the startup, you know. So if I
Yes.
have a very, very strong bias towards something, then I will sort of strongly express what I think.
Okay.
And if it comes to a clash because of a disagreement, then we'll deal with it. But it's
Okay.
very, very rare, to be honest.
Okay.
And
So
so it's much more like, you know.
So you're negotiating really with the.
It's not really negotiating. It's just saying, look, I'm not running the business, but I've been doing this for 10 years, and over 10 years, I've seen that this works and this doesn't work, and that's what I will use very often, which is, hey,
Your
in this,
experience,
that's why it takes so long
Yes.
to be I would say, a good investor, because
Yes.
you need the background and the experience and a bunch of failures, to be honest. Because
Yes.
you know, Kosla told me it takes 10 years and maybe you know, losing $60 to $100 million in investments to sort of figure out whether you're actually a good investor or not.
Yes.
So I'm not there yet. I'm there in terms of lengths of investing. I'm not there in terms of money lost by far.
Thank goodness.
Thank God. But
Hopefully not.
the point, well, you know, when you invest, losing $100 million when you invest at this stage, that would be hard.
Yes.
But the point is that you draw on your experience and
Yes.
say, hey, in that case, we've seen this working, and in those cases they failed. So let's try and sort of take advantage of that experience.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's much more a you know, let me try and help you, support you, give you, you know, access to people who can give you a practical sort of point of view,
Right.
you know, to help you. And then, you know, if you ask me my
So it's
point
like
of view,
advice and mentoring, really. That it would be.
it's
the
much more
tactic.
it's much more mentoring than
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
Yes, if ever we really disagree,
Yeah.
and I know you're heading for the wall,
Yeah.
then we'll have a stronger conversation with a lot of expletives involved.
Yes.
But you know, typically the whole point of the relationship is to build, you know, this sort of trust where I trust you, as in I think that you're able to run the company, and so
Yes.
if you tell me this is what we want to do, then I might question it. I might sort of try and gather some background information, so on and so forth, as to what led to this decision. But you know, at the end of the day, I'll support you.
Yes.
Or if I think it's stupid, then we'll sort of definitely discuss that.
Very
But
good.
my goal is to really sort of de-risk the execution part where we do.
Of course.